Coming up, thousands of pages and countless hours of testimony, yet conspiracy theories about the 9/11 attacks, they're running wild on the internet. We'll dig deeper with both sides tonight. But are we getting the truth about what happened on 9/11? A growing group of Americans think we haven't gotten the full story, and we'll hear from both sides later. Coming up next on Scarborough Country, 9/11 conspiracy theories. Are they fact or fiction? You're going to want to hear from our next two guests before you answer this controversial question. Although the September 11th attacks were almost 5 years ago and the 9/11 Commission report has been released for some time now, some folks are still asking questions about what happened that day. A Zogby poll commissioned just last month by 911truth.org found that a whopping 42% of Americans think the government and the 9/11 Commission are covering something up. Conspiracy theory videos, they're all over the internet. Here's one of them that we're going to talk about. Joining me now is Michael Berger, 911truth.org press spokesperson. Welcome to Scarborough Country.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael, did the 9/11 Commission get it wrong?
Well, I think there are many conflicts of interest that the Commission members had, and there are certainly conflicts in official testimony that were never reconciled, such as between Norman Mineta and Dick Cheney regarding his whereabouts in the presidential bunker and about Flight 77 in the Pentagon, for example.
Did they deliberately get it wrong?
Oh, I'd love to get them under oath and find out.
But is your suspicion that there was collusion among these 10 folks, that there was a cover-up and that they were all in on it, that some of them were in on it, that none of them were in on it?
Well, I mean, all we can do is look at the results of the official testimony. For example, in a footnote to the Commission report, the Commission stated that the black boxes were never recovered from Ground Zero, and yet, through independent sources, through a 20-year veteran of the fire department who took federal agents around, who located the boxes, and an anonymous source at the NTSB in December of '05 who publicly said to David Lindorff that he had examined those boxes. These contradictions have never been reconciled, so it raises questions.
Is that the best of what you've got? In other words, and
well,
I don't ask it in a condescending way, but like knock my socks off. With all that took place on September 11, what's the one element that you think folks in Scarborough Country will say, holy smokes, I didn't know that?
Well, I had asked your producer if you would play a clip of Building 7, for example.
We will. Here you go. Tell us what we're about to see.
Well, I can't see the clip, but what you're seeing is Building 7 was north of the World Trade Center site. It was damaged in the collapse of the North Tower on its south face. It was a 47-story tall, 570-foot tall building, and yet even the FEMA report in the investigation of the collapse of that building, again, was never hit by a plane. Collapsed at 5:20 in the afternoon on September 11th.
But it was in such close proximity to the Twin Towers. I mean,
Absolutely.
Surely it paid a price because it was...
Absolutely, Michael, it did. However, again, the NIST investigation said that the damage from the collapse of the North Tower took out structural columns on the south face. If you watch that clip, you can see, depending on the clip you're showing, whether or not the east penthouse begins the collapse.
Michael Berger,
and yet, Michael, let me finish though. And yet, the building does not collapse to the south in the direction of the damage. It collapses straight down symmetrically in 6.6 seconds.
I've got to move on because our time's limited. The Pentagon. Well, hold on now. I spent a lot of time.
You had asked me. I would like to address this one issue, though.
And you did. But the Pentagon.
There's a bit more to it. There is more to it. There's molten metal. The steel was removed.
We didn't have time constraints. But having surveyed the internet today for a time period longer than I care to admit, the Pentagon seems to be a great focus from people who believe that we haven't gotten the full truth relative to September 11. You know what I'm talking about. The lack of wreckage from a fuselage on the lawn of the Pentagon, concern about the videotape. Here's what I keep coming back to. Where are the people? Where are the folks who are on Flight 77? Where are those 64 individuals living in Area 51? I mean, where are they?
I would like to, for example, you raise a great question. I'd like to know where the fighter jets were from the Air National Guard unit at Andrews, 10 miles away, that an hour and 20 minutes after we knew we were under attack, the Pentagon could not be protected.
But it's like that movie, that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village. Michael, I think this is legitimate. This is because to buy into this is to buy into that, that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village. I've got to believe, and I think it's horrific to bring such a burden on the living relatives of family members who died on that flight. This idea that maybe they're living somewhere and they're going to come running in with a Hollywood ending.
I'm glad you bring up the relatives and the family members, because the firefighters, for example, sued and lobbied congressmen for hearings about the radios and an illegal contract with Motorola in New York City. And they have asked specifically their representatives to hold hearings with subpoena power on the Hill.
We had hearings. They were 9/11 Commission hearings. Look, I want to be fair to you, but I've got to bring in Steve Emerson.
We're talking about first responders.
I hear you.
We talked about believing the sheriff on the border. What about the firefighters who have asked for their day and their hearings?
Steve Emerson, come in here. Bring some sanity to my conversation. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Michael.
I mean, is this just part and parcel of a major catastrophe?
Listen, in any catastrophe, you're going to have sometimes irreconcilable statements because people's memories aren't exactly they don't reconcile each other all the time. They don't confirm each other. However, in the statements that this man just made, I can tell you, one, that FEMA definitely, Federal Emergency Management Association, definitely concluded that World Trade Center building number 7 collapsed because of the collapse of number 1. As far as the Pentagon, there were 100 forensic specialists and others identified who identified 184 of the 189 people aboard. Look, this is the Oliver Stone theory of politics.
But Steve, here's what's scary, man. 42%, according to Zogby, are buying into some of this.
Well, I don't know how that question was raised. Look, people are always going to, there's always a suspicion of power, of concentrated power. There's a suspicion of government. There's always a question of cover-ups. The fact of the matter is that the Kennedy Commission, the Warren Commission, never adequately investigated the Oswald theory.
Yeah, by the way, are you standing in the grassy knoll right now? I see a man with an umbrella moving up and down behind you. I got to roll, but I appreciate you being in Scarborough country.
Got it.
Steve Emerson, as always. When we